Kale moved through the sterile corridor of Alpha Prime Space Station with the fluid grace characteristic of Xylosians. His translucent blue skin shimmered under the artificial lighting, chlorophyll-rich cells beneath the surface efficiently absorbing energy. Unlike the newly arrived humans with their cumbersome gait and constant need for sustenance, Kale's species had evolved beyond such primitive limitations. Their direct nutrient absorption through specialized dermal layers eliminated the need for digestive systems, and their respiratory efficiency produced no wasteful emissions. As Alpha Prime's youngest senior xenobiologist, Kale had earned his position through brilliance and meticulous attention to detail. The prestigious Interplanetary Research Institute had recognized his potential early, recruiting him directly from the Xylosian Academy of Comparative Biology. His specialty in comparative physiology had earned him recognition across several star systems, and he carried that knowledge with the subtle arrogance of someone who had rarely encountered failure. "Kale, have you heard the news?" Lyra, a Zentarian anthropologist, called out as she approached. Her iridescent scales rippled with excitement, a common emotional display for her species. Kale waited for his colleague to catch up, his slender limbs folding into the formal greeting posture. "I assume you're referring to the human delegation?" "Yes. Isn't it fascinating? After centuries of observation, Earth has finally been officially invited to join the Planetary Alliance." Lyra's multifaceted eyes gleamed with enthusiasm. "I've been studying their cultural transmissions for years, but to actually meet them in person, their diversity alone is astounding." "Their inefficiency is what's astounding," Kale interrupted. "Have you reviewed their biological profiles? Wasteful metabolic processes, redundant systems, primitive sensory apparatus." Lyra made a chirping sound that served as her species' equivalent of laughter. "Always the scientist, aren't you? But there must be evolutionary advantages to their biology, or they wouldn't have become the dominant species on their planet. Dominant by default, perhaps. Their planet was surprisingly devoid of intelligent competition." Kale's skin flickered slightly, indicating dismissal of the topic. "In any case, I have more pressing matters. Director Thal has assigned me to prepare a preliminary biological compatibility report for the station's new human-accessible common areas." Lyra's scales brightened. "What perfect timing. This will give you a chance to study them up close. I hardly see how watching humans consume organic matter through their face orifices and excrete waste products qualifies as perfect timing," Kale replied. "Nevertheless, I'll complete the assignment with my usual thoroughness." As they parted ways, Kale proceeded to his laboratory. The sterile environment, with its precisely calibrated atmosphere and ergonomic workstations designed for multiple species, provided the comfort of scientific objectivity. Here, at least, everything made sense. Kale activated his workstation and began reviewing the preliminary data on human biology. The station had received basic medical reports and observational footage of the humans who had already arrived. What he saw made his dermal cells contract in revulsion. "Computer, replay human feeding sequence," he commanded. The holographic display showed a group of humans sitting around a table, inserting various substances into their mouths, masticating with exposed teeth, and then swallowing. Kale paused the footage. "Computer, magnify an enhanced digestive process schematic." A detailed anatomical diagram appeared, showing the complex route food took through the human body, from esophagus to intestines, breaking down along the way before the remaining material was expelled. "Revolting," Kale muttered. "An entire internal factory dedicated to processing external nutrients, when direct absorption is clearly superior." He continued scrolling through the data. The next section detailed human thermoregulation, featuring footage of humans engaged in physical exercise, their skin becoming moist with what the report identified as sweat. "They leak fluids when overheated?" Kale's voice rose in disbelief. "Computer, analyze composition of human sweat." The display showed water, sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and trace amounts of other minerals and metabolic wastes. "They excrete valuable minerals through their skin?" What evolutionary dysfunction led to such wastefulness? Kale recorded his observations, his comments increasingly critical. The next section on sleep patterns provoked further disbelief. 8 hours of unconsciousness every day cycle. They spend a third of their lives in a vulnerable, unproductive state. By the time he reached the sections on human emotional responses, crying, laughter, blushing, and the extreme variations in their physical appearance, skin pigmentation, hair types, eye colors, Kale had filled his preliminary report with what could only be described as scientific contempt. Lyra found him still working several hours later, his skin now a darker blue indicating intense concentration. "Still studying the humans?" she asked, gliding into the laboratory. "I am attempting to comprehend how a species with such inefficient biological systems ever managed to develop spaceflight," Kale replied, without looking up. "Their entire physiology seems like an evolutionary mistake." Lyra settled herself on a specially designed seat. "Perhaps you're approaching this from too narrow a perspective. Biology isn't just about efficiency, Kale. It's about adaptation to specific environmental conditions. What possible environment would favor leaking fluids, storing excess energy as adipose tissue, and shutting down consciousness for extended periods?" Kale gestured at his display, which showed various human body types. And this range of phenotypic expression within a single species, it defies logical evolutionary pressure. That diversity might be precisely what allowed them to colonize so many different environments on their planet, Lyra suggested. And remember, Earth has extreme temperature variations, seasonal changes, and widely different ecosystems. Perhaps what seems inefficient in our controlled environments was actually adaptive there. Kale made a dismissive gesture. "I have a report to complete, Lyra. Not all of us find these biological curiosities as charming as you do." After Lyra left, Kale continued his research, his initial revulsion gradually giving way to a grudging scientific curiosity. Despite his prejudice, he was still a scientist at heart, and the seemingly illogical nature of human biology presented a puzzle. He accessed the station's library of human-produced scientific content, focusing on explanations of their own physiology from an evolutionary perspective. The virtual conference recordings featured human scientists discussing their biology. The human digestive system evolved to process a remarkably wide range of foodstuffs, explained a human nutritional scientist in one recording. "Our omnivorous diet allowed early humans to survive in diverse environments, from tropical forests to arid savannas. This dietary flexibility was crucial during climate shifts and migrations." Kale paused the recording. "Computer, compare nutritional flexibility of humans versus xylosians." The analysis showed that while xylosians could absorb a precisely calibrated range of nutrients directly through their skin, they required a stable environment with consistent nutrient availability. Humans, by contrast, could extract nutrients from thousands of different organic sources, could survive on widely varying diets, and could store energy for later use. "Inefficient, but adaptable," Kale murmured, making additional notes. He moved on to a presentation about human thermoregulation. "Sweating was a game-changer in human evolution," a human physiologist explained enthusiastically. "It allowed our ancestors to become persistence hunters in hot environments, outrunning faster prey animals that couldn't cool themselves as efficiently during extended chases." The accompanying simulation showed early humans pursuing prey across a sun-baked landscape, their sweat cooling system allowing them to maintain activity while their prey eventually succumbed to heat exhaustion. Kale watched with reluctant interest. A crude method, but effective in its context, he admitted to the empty laboratory. The section on sleep proved equally illuminating, though no less strange to xylosian sensibilities. During sleep, particularly REM sleep, the human brain processes information, consolidates memories, and performs essential maintenance functions, explained a human neuroscientist. Studies show that consistent, quality sleep improves cognitive function, enhances immune response, and is essential for emotional regulation. They require a complete system shutdown for maintenance, Kale noted. remarkably primitive compared to our continuous neural optimization, but functional within their limitations. Despite these insights, Cale's report remained heavily biased, though now with more sophisticated criticisms. Where earlier he had simply dismissed human biology as disgusting and illogical, he now analyzed it as an interesting but deeply flawed system, an evolutionary path that had somehow succeeded despite its obvious inefficiencies. Humans require dedicated spaces for food preparation and consumption, waste elimination, and sleep cycles, he wrote in his recommendations. Their tendency to expel moisture requires additional atmospheric processing and surface treatments to prevent damage to sensitive equipment. Their extreme sensory and emotional variability necessitates additional considerations for lighting, sound levels, and temperature control compared to more stable species. The next morning, Cale was summoned to Director Thal's office. The venerable Arcturian administrator regarded him with all four eyes, a sign of serious attention. Your preliminary report contains valuable technical information, xenobiologist Cale, Director Thal began, but I find your analysis lacks the perspective we need for true interspecies accommodation. I provided an objective assessment of human biological requirements. Cale responded, his skin shifting to a defensive pattern. Objective? One of Director Thal's eye stalks angled forward skeptically. I counted 17 uses of terms like inefficient, wasteful, and primitive in reference to human physiology. That suggests bias, not objectivity. Cale's skin darkened with embarrassment. I merely pointed out the comparative inefficiencies in their biological systems. Science isn't just about noting differences, but understanding their functional context, Director Thal replied. I'm assigning you additional research. You'll interview several human volunteers and observe them in various station environments. Your final report should reflect a more comprehensive understanding. Cale left the director's office feeling unjustly criticized. His scientific assessment had been accurate, if perhaps bluntly phrased. Nevertheless, he would comply with the directive. His first interview was scheduled with Dr. Lena Hansen, a human astrobiology specialist recently arrived from Earth. Cale prepared a list of pointed questions designed to highlight the limitations of human biology. Dr. Hansen arrived at the designated meeting area precisely on time, a trait Cale hadn't expected from a human. She was taller than he had anticipated, with dark skin, curly black hair pulled back from her face, and an expression of open curiosity. Xenobiologist Cale, I presume, she said, offering a greeting gesture that approximated the Xylosian formal acknowledgement. I'm Dr. Lena Hansen. I've been looking forward to this exchange. Your work on comparative respiratory efficiency across oxygen-metabolizing species is frequently cited in Earth's xenobiology programs. Cale's skin rippled with surprise at both her knowledge of his work and her attempt at his cultural greeting. You're familiar with Xylosian research? Of course, she replied, taking a seat across from him. Understanding diverse biological approaches is essential to advancing our knowledge. We humans may be newcomers to the Alliance, but we've been studying potential extraterrestrial biology for centuries. Your actual physiology is fascinating compared to our speculative models. This wasn't how Cale had expected the interview to begin. He had anticipated defensiveness or ignorance, not collegial enthusiasm. Let me be direct, Dr. Hansen, he said, deciding to stick to his planned approach. I'm tasked with assessing biological compatibility for shared spaces on Alpha Prime. Human physiology presents several challenges from a design perspective. I'm sure it does, she agreed readily. Our biological needs are quite different from many Alliance species. What aspects are you finding most problematic? Her candid response momentarily disarmed him. Your digestive system, for instance. The need to consume solid organic matter and then excrete waste products seems unnecessarily complex and unsanitary compared to direct nutrient absorption. Instead of taking offense, Dr. Hansen nodded thoughtfully. From your perspective, I can see why it would appear that way. Xylosians evolved on a world with atmospheric nutrients you could absorb directly. Earth's nutrient distribution didn't allow for that evolutionary path. Our digestive system, while complex, allows us to extract energy and nutrients from an incredibly wide range of sources. She smiled. It's given us remarkable adaptability. Humans can survive in environments ranging from Arctic tundra to tropical rainforests, deserts to wetlands, by consuming whatever local food sources are available. We've survived famines by eating foods that would be considered inedible under normal circumstances. But the inefficiency, Kale began. Efficiency is relative to environmental context, Dr. Hansen interrupted gently. In a controlled environment like this station, direct absorption might indeed be more efficient. But in a chaotic, variable environment like Earth, our inefficient system provided crucial flexibility. She leaned forward. Consider this. Xylogens require specific atmospheric compositions and nutrient densities to survive. How many different planetary environments can your species inhabit without technological assistance? Kale hesitated. Our environmental requirements are specific, he admitted. Humans, with our primitive biology, have survived and thrived in environments ranging from oxygen levels of 14% to 35%, temperatures from -50 degrees Celsius to 50 degrees Celsius, at sea level and at altitudes where oxygen is scarce. Our redundant systems and apparently wasteful biology give us remarkable resilience. Dr. Hansen's points were scientifically sound, Kale realized with growing discomfort. His questions about human thermal regulation met similar counterarguments. Sweating may seem messy, she acknowledged, but it allows us to engage in extended physical activity in hot environments. Our ancestors could pursue prey for hours in scorching heat, a hunting strategy called persistence hunting. Predators faster than us would eventually overheat and collapse, while we could continue. Your prey would outrun you initially? Kale asked, finding this hunting strategy bizarre. Often yes, but we would track them, continuing the pursuit until their bodies couldn't regulate temperature effectively anymore. Our sweat-based cooling system gave us an endurance advantage few Earth mammals could match. When Kale questioned the inefficiency of human sleep patterns, Dr. Hansen again provided context he hadn't considered. Sleep serves multiple critical functions beyond simple rest, she explained. During sleep, especially REM sleep, our brains process information, consolidate memories, and perform cellular maintenance. Our immune system strengthens, our emotional regulation improves, and our cognitive abilities sharpen. She smiled ruefully. I agree that from a pure productivity standpoint, spending a third of our lives unconscious seems wasteful. But experiments with sleep deprivation show catastrophic cognitive and physical decline within just a few days. Whatever evolutionary pressures shaped our need for sleep, they were powerful enough that no human population ever evolved beyond it. Their conversation continued for almost 2 hours, far longer than Kale had planned. With each topic, Dr. Hansen acknowledged the apparent limitations of human biology while illuminating the adaptive advantages these seemingly inefficient systems had provided in Earth's diverse and volatile environments. As the interview concluded, Dr. Hansen offered a final observation. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of our biology isn't visible in medical scans or performance metrics, she said. It's our adaptability, not just as a species over evolutionary time, but as individuals within our lifetimes. Our bodies strengthen in response to stress. Our immune systems learn from each pathogen they encounter. Our brains rewire themselves based on experience. We're constantly adapting individually and collectively. After she left, Kale remained in the meeting room, his neat list of critical observations now covered with additional notes that complicated his initial assessment. He felt intellectually challenged in a way that was both irritating and stimulating. The next phase of his research involved observing humans in various station environments. Lyra, learning of this assignment, insisted on accompanying him to a human physical training session. You need a cultural interpreter, she claimed. Besides, I've been studying human nonverbal communication patterns. This is perfect research opportunity for both of us. The training area had been adapted for human use with various mechanical resistance devices and open floor space. A group of human security personnel were engaged in what appeared to be a structured exercise routine. Kale watched with scientific detachment as the humans lifted weighted objects, performed coordinated movements, and engaged in simulated combat training. Their physical exertion was evident, skin flushing with increased blood flow, sweat beginning to appear, respiration rates increasing. Such inefficient energy expenditure, he commented to Lyra. Exercise could be accomplished with much less metabolic waste. But look at their coordination, Lyra replied. The social aspects of group training, the way they communicate and support each other. Kale had to admit there was something impressive about the humans' movements. Despite their seemingly unwieldy biology, they demonstrated remarkable strength, endurance, and flexibility. Their bodies, so different from one another in size and shape, all performed with surprising effectiveness. During a brief rest period, one of the human security officers noticed their observation and approached. His dark uniform was dampened with sweat, and his breathing was slightly elevated from exertion. "Welcome to our workout session," he said, offering a respectful nod rather than attempting an alien greeting gesture. "I'm Security Chief Marcus Chun. Are you here for the cross-species training program we're developing?" "We're observing for research purposes," Kale replied stiffly. "I'm conducting a biological compatibility assessment." Lyra interjected smoothly. "We're fascinated by human physical training methods. On my world, physical development is a solitary pursuit. This group approach seems very communal." Security Chief Chun smiled. "Humans have been training together since our earliest civilizations. We push each other, support each other. There's something about shared effort that brings out our best performance." As they conversed, the exercise session continued. Kale observed a female human attempting to lift a particularly heavy weight. She struggled, muscles trembling with effort, face contorting in what appeared to be pain. "Why does she continue if the activity causes distress?" Kale asked, genuinely puzzled. "That's Lieutenant Rodriguez," Chen explained. "She's working at her growth edge, challenging her muscles just beyond their comfort zone. That's how we get stronger. The temporary discomfort leads to adaptation and improvement." Kale watched as another human moved to spot for Lieutenant Rodriguez, offering encouragement and physical support. When she successfully completed the lift, several humans called out congratulations, and her face transformed with what Kale recognized as the human expression of joy. The social reinforcement provides additional motivation, Kale noted, beginning to see the functional purpose behind what had initially seemed merely inefficient. Their observation continued until an unexpected incident occurred. During a combat simulation, one of the human security officers fell awkwardly and cried out in pain, clutching his ankle. Immediately, the training stopped. Several humans rushed to the injured man's side, while another called for medical assistance. Kale was struck by the immediate and collective response to one individual's distress. Security Chief Chun knelt beside the injured officer, examining the ankle with careful movements. "Looks like a sprain, Williams. Nothing broken, but you'll need to stay off it for a few days." "Damn it," Williams responded through gritted teeth. "The security review is next week. We'll cover for you," another human assured him. "Focus on recovery." Kale observed the interaction with fascination. The injured human was clearly experiencing pain, an evolutionary warning system, yet his primary concern appeared to be his inability to perform duties for the group. And the group's response was to provide immediate support and assurance. As medical personnel arrived to treat the injury, Kale turned to Lyra. "Their social cohesion is remarkable," he said quietly, "even in response to biological weakness. Perhaps the social cohesion evolved precisely because of those biological vulnerabilities," Lyra suggested. "Xylosians are largely self-sufficient from birth. Humans require years of care before independence. Maybe their strong social structures developed from that necessary interdependence." It was an intriguing hypothesis, one that Kale reluctantly added to his growing list of observations that complicated his initial assessment. Later that day, Lyra shared her anthropological findings on human culture. "Their art, music, literature. It's all deeply tied to their biology, she explained enthusiastically. Their music resonates at frequencies that trigger emotional responses in their unique neural structure. Their visual art exploits the specific light wavelengths their eyes can perceive. Their literature constantly references bodily experiences: hunger, pain, pleasure, exhaustion. What's your point? Kale asked, still distracted by his earlier observations. Don't you see? What you've been calling biological inefficiencies might be the very foundations of their remarkable cultural achievements. Their emotional range, their sensory experiences, even their need for sleep, which produces dreams that inspire creativity, all contribute to their cultural complexity. That seems speculative, Kale replied, though with less conviction than he might have expressed days earlier. Is it? Consider their adaptability. Humans have only been spacefaring for a few of their centuries, yet already they've established colonies in their solar system and developed ships capable of reaching neighboring stars. Compare that to species that took millennia to achieve similar milestones. Kale spent that evening revising portions of his report. He removed some of the more dismissive language, acknowledging that certain aspects of human biology, while different from Xylosian standards, serve functional purposes in Earth's environment. He still included numerous critiques and recommendations for accommodations that would be necessary for human-accessible areas, but the tone had shifted subtly from contempt to cautious respect for a different evolutionary approach. The following day, Alpha Prime experienced a serious technical malfunction. A power failure affected a significant portion of the station, causing life support systems to fluctuate. In several sections, temperature regulation failed, resulting in dangerous heat increases. Kale was in one of the affected research laboratories when the emergency began. The environmental alert sounded, and the automated system announced, "Warning, environmental control failure in sections 12 through 17. All personnel proceed to emergency shelters." Temperature increasing beyond safe parameters for Class C species. Class C species, which included Xylosians, were those with limited internal temperature regulation capabilities. Kale immediately felt the rising heat as an existential threat. Xylosian physiology was optimized for stable environments. Their thin skin and limited temperature regulation made them vulnerable to sudden environmental changes. As the laboratory temperature continued rising, Kale began experiencing symptoms of heat stress. His normally precise movements became uncoordinated, and his thought processes began to slow. He moved toward the exit, but the corridor beyond was even hotter, a wall of hostile air that his body couldn't withstand. Throughout the affected sections, the scenario was repeating itself. Xylosians and other temperature-sensitive species were rapidly becoming incapacitated. In contrast, the humans, while clearly uncomfortable in the rising heat, retained their functionality much longer. Dr. Lena Hansen had been in a nearby laboratory when the emergency began. As the temperature rose, her body responded exactly as she had explained to Kale. Her skin began producing sweat. Her blood vessels dilated to release heat, and while these responses were uncomfortable, they allowed her to continue functioning. Recognizing the particular danger to Xylosians, Dr. Hansen organized several humans into search and assistance teams. Xylosians will be going into thermal shock, she explained quickly. Their skin can't handle sudden temperature changes. We need to find them and get them to cooler sections immediately. She herself headed toward the xenobiology labs, knowing Kale would likely be there. When she reached the laboratory corridor, the heat was intense enough that her clothes were soaked with sweat and her breathing was labored, but her body's cooling system continued functioning. She found Kale slumped near a doorway, his blue skin dangerously pale, his movements weak and disorganized. "Xenobiologist Kale," she called, kneeling beside him. "We need to get you to a safe zone. Can you walk with assistance?" Kale's normally precise speech was slurred. "Cannot. Regulate. Too hot." Dr. Hansen called into her communicator. "I need assistance in lab corridor 15B. Xylosian in thermal distress." Within moments, Security Chief Chen arrived, equally sweat-soaked but still functional. Together, they carefully lifted Kale, supporting him between them. In his semi-conscious state, Kale was acutely aware of the human bodies against his, their elevated temperature, the moisture of their skin, the strength of their muscles. What had once seemed repulsive now represented safety and rescue. Their inefficient cooling system was keeping them functional in conditions where his superior Xylosian physiology had failed. They carried him through corridors where the emergency response was in full effect. Humans were everywhere, sweating profusely, breathing heavily, but working tirelessly to assist affected individuals of various species. Kale observed through his haze that many of the evacuation coordinators were human, their biology giving them a critical advantage in the crisis. In the medical stabilization area, human medical personnel worked alongside other species to treat those suffering from environmental exposure. Kale watched as Dr. Hansen moved from patient to patient, her training allowing her to adapt medical techniques for different physiologies. Despite her obvious physical discomfort, her hair plastered her forehead with sweat, her skin flushed with heat, she worked without complaint, her focus entirely on those in need. As cooling treatments stabilized his condition, Kale experienced a profound shift in perspective. What he had classified as biological inefficiencies had proven to be survival advantages in a crisis. The human's internal temperature regulation, their endurance, their strength, all had proven essential when technological systems failed. He recalled Dr. Hansen's words about adaptability and resilience. In the controlled environment of normal station operations, Xylosian biology seemed elegant and efficient. But in this crisis of changing conditions, human biology demonstrated its remarkable adaptive value. The emergency was resolved within hours, as station engineers repaired the environmental systems and restored proper temperature regulation. Kale remained in the medical center overnight for observation, as did many Xylosians and other temperature-sensitive species. The next morning, feeling physically recovered but intellectually transformed, Kale requested a meeting with Dr. Hansen. She arrived looking tired but alert, the crisis having demanded extended work hours for medical personnel. "How are you feeling, xenobiologist Kale?" she asked with genuine concern. "Physically recovered," he replied. "Intellectually, recalibrating." "That's understandable after such an experience," she said. "Environmental crises can be particularly challenging for species adapted to stable conditions." "That's precisely what I wish to discuss," Kale said, his tone now entirely without its former condescension. I want to thank you for your assistance during the emergency. Without human intervention, the casualty rate among Xylosians would have been much higher. We were fortunate that our biology gave us a slight advantage in those particular conditions, Dr. Hansen replied modestly. "It wasn't fortune," Kale said firmly. "It was adaptation, precisely the quality I dismissed in my initial assessment of human physiology." He hesitated, then continued with scientific honesty. "I was wrong, Dr. Hansen. I evaluated human biology against Xylosian standards without considering the environmental context that shaped our different evolutionary paths." Dr. Hansen smiled. "That's the essence of comparative xenobiology, isn't it? Understanding that different isn't inferior, just adapted to different conditions." "Yes," Kale agreed. "And sometimes what appears inefficient in one context proves invaluable in another. Your sweat-based cooling system, your physical strength and endurance, your adaptability to changing conditions. These aren't evolutionary flaws, but specialized adaptations." In the days that followed, Kale completely rewrote his biological compatibility report. Where his original draft had focused on accommodating what he perceived as human limitations, his new report emphasized the unique adaptive strengths of human biology and the potential benefits of human presence during various station contingencies. He recommended environmental designs that would be comfortable for multiple species while highlighting how human adaptability could serve as a buffer during system fluctuations. He noted the advantages of having species with different biological specializations working together, creating a more resilient station community. When he submitted the report to Director Thal, the Arcturian administrator read it with increasing approval. This represents a significant evolution in your analysis, xenobiologist Kale, Director Thal observed. Your recommendations are not just scientifically sound, but show a deeper understanding of interspecies complementarity. The emergency provided practical evidence that challenged my theoretical assumptions, Kale acknowledged. The best scientists are those willing to revise their hypotheses when presented with new data, Director Thal replied. I would like you to present your findings to the Interspecies Accommodation Committee next week. Kale spent the intervening days refining his presentation and continuing his observations of human behavior and biology around the station. He found himself noticing aspects he had previously overlooked. The way humans adapted their behaviors for different species, their curiosity about alien biology, their willingness to try new experiences. On the day of his presentation, Kale stood before a diverse committee representing 12 different species, including several humans. Dr. Hansen sat among them, offering an encouraging nod as he began. Distinguished colleagues, Kale began, my research began with a question that I must now confess was inappropriately framed. What is wrong with human biology? This question revealed my own biases rather than any objective scientific assessment. He proceeded to outline his journey from initial prejudice to deeper understanding, explaining how the emergency had demonstrated the practical advantages of what he had previously considered biological inefficiencies. Human biology is not wrong, he concluded. It is simply different, adapted for an environment unlike those that shaped many allied species. The very features I initially dismissed as inefficient, their complex digestive system, their sweat-based temperature regulation, their need for sleep cycles, provide remarkable adaptability in changing conditions. He displayed the final slide of his presentation, which read, Biological diversity across species, like biodiversity within ecosystems, creates resilience through complementary adaptations. The committee received his presentation with approval, and several members contributed their own observations about human adaptability and potential contributions to station life. As the meeting concluded, Dr. Hansen approached him. That was quite a scientific journey, she said with a smile. From what's wrong with human biology to an appreciation of interspecies complementarity. Science demands we follow the evidence, even when it challenges our preconceptions, Kale replied. Though I admit, my initial preconceptions were particularly resistant to revision. Would you be interested in collaborating on a more extensive study? She asked. I've been thinking about comparative stress responses across oxygen-metabolizing species, and your expertise would be invaluable. I would welcome that opportunity, Kale said, surprising himself with his enthusiasm. Several weeks later, Kale sat in one of Alpha Prime's newly designed cross-species social areas, a space reflecting many of his recommendations. At a table designed to accommodate various physiologies, he joined Dr. Hansen and several other humans, along with Lyra and colleagues from other species. As they discussed potential collaborative research projects, Kale observed the humans with new appreciation. Yes, they still perspired when station temperatures rose slightly above their optimal range. They still consumed solid foods and required sleep cycles. Their emotional expressions still seemed excessive by Xylosian standards. But he now recognized these features not as flaws, but as different solutions to the challenge of survival. Solutions that had allowed humans to thrive in Earth's wildly variable environments and, ultimately, to reach the stars. When a human colleague made a joke that triggered laughter around the table, Kale found himself experiencing something unexpected, a genuine appreciation for the emotional expressiveness he had once dismissed. There is a certain vibrancy in human interaction, a passion and intensity that reflected their biological nature. Different, he thought, but not wrong. Simply the product of a unique evolutionary path. And in that moment of understanding, Kale recognized that the greatest adaptation of all might be the intellectual flexibility to appreciate biological diversity in all its forms, the very essence of true xenobiology.